Hello, this is Jose of Your Fish Keeping. What the heck happened yesterday at Mexicali live with myself, Sean of Discus North, and Aquafunk. If you can go back to the live with Patty Aquatics and Corey of Aquarium Co-op, I had done a kind of, I guess, a response to that video, and it was really mostly meant towards the idea of the natural tanks or the dirty tanks, and never change water, never change, no filtering, no air movement, basically. So it's supposedly a natural tank with none of these things, as I mentioned already. Sean, which I've been in touch with during this time, Sean of Discus North, he has very strong feelings and opinions about this and what he called following kind of like a cult and drinking the Kool-Aid, if you know the Jim Jones reference. And I said, and I got a lot of reactions from Patty's aquatic video, including from Dr. Fish. He was involved in the chat yesterday. So since his name has been mentioned, I feel okay to mention it now. Dr. Fish basically, or his people, whoever checked his chat or whoever was involved in the chat yesterday or respond to his messages. I know he has a large staff of people that do a lot of the work for him. They say that's the way of speaking about Father Fish without mentioning Father Fish, which I think it was decent. He saw the video, obviously, and responded to it, not in a necessarily negative way. I think I took it as positive, so I'll take it for that. Now, I told George from Mexicali, I said, why don't we do a video about this whole topic? And I just want to be clear to everybody that I am not talking about how often you should do water change, what kind of water change you should do, how much you should do. That was not the intended topic of this discussion. It's supposed to be a civil discussion. Excuse me for my choice of words sometimes. So anyway, for me, water change is what happens is I like to do about 80% on all my tanks once a week, Saturday, because that works for me. Not because I need to on some other tanks. Some other tank I can easily go a month. But it's easier for me to do everything on Saturday, which is like it's today, which is typically the day that I use for water changes. It keeps a schedule. I know I do it every Saturday. So if I didn't do it 1 week or the next week, when did I do it? Was it 3 weeks ago? So it eliminates a possibility. I like water changes. I think there's a lot of good reason for it. And that was one of the things that I was hoping to get involved. I contacted George and I said, George, why don't we do a video and let's talk about the subject a little bit more, because it raised a lot of comments, a lot of questions from a lot of people. And Corey said some things on it that made Patty say, you probably are right. Now Patty was listening with interest and had an open mind, it seemed to me, at least at the time. And he says, probably I will change my thinking and add air movement because there's benefit to oxygen. Although fish on the surface may seem okay, there are things sometimes that we don't measure for a lot in waterkeeper. There's basic parameters that we measure, but most other things we don't. We may have a way, but it may get costly, complicated, or there's no need to really do it. TDS, for example, I don't measure TDS. I don't measure GH or KH because to me it really doesn't matter. I don't chase any parameters. I don't chase any number. Water straight out of the tap. I do add other chlorinator because my area is heavily chlorinated. I could smell it sometimes. The water, if it's open for a while, I could smell it. And I like the benefits of Safe, which is what I use. I'm not sponsored by anybody, neither do I want to at this point, to be honest. Now, so this conversation did take a nice, I'm being sarcastic. It took a nice turn because for those of you who know Funk, you know his ways, you know his personality. I love the man. I think he's very entertaining, and I like listening to him. The way he presents things, and we all have a way of presenting our things. I am not the guy who is, you know what I'm talking about. My demeanor tends to be a little bit calmer in my professional life here and just in life in general. I don't let a lot of things stress me out. So Sean has his opinion, and push his button did Funk too. I mean, it got to a point it was just George had to yell and drop the F-bomb, and I said, George, I never heard you drop the F-bomb on your lives. He says, I do what is needed, but the point it was like, whoa. And he had to mute them both because my plan was to present some basic science background, which I do have. And I was trying to make some parallels to people, medicine, and to fish as a living tissue. That was my plan. Of course, it didn't go that way. So I just wanted to present some basic science terms, some basic concept. I do understand that everybody that has a YouTube channel, everybody that listens to us has a different background. My thinking is that as YouTubers, we do influence. I don't call myself an influencer or any other YouTube, but we do influence people's actions and thinking. Now, what I mean by that is there was a young man, 24-year-old, he's a civil engineer in the Dominican Republic, Eliam, that's his name. He reached out to me by one of the messages, and I felt comfortable that this kid was genuine. He was really wanted to learn, and he was asking me. He's like a very avid and smart fish keeper. Watches his parameter. He has a very stable 120-gallon tank. He wants to go into discus, so he's all prepared with a quarantine tank. He was asking what methods I use. I said, listen, this is what I do. This is not necessarily the way. I tend to be a little bit excessive on my quarantine process because I've had major failures here where I lost about 20 discus plus other fish and 50% of everything else due to disease and rushing quarantine. So I gave him my phone. I reached out through email and I gave him my phone number. We've been texting back and forth. And he has genuine questions. He says, somebody told me that I should never do this. And I said, listen, there's a lot of information out there in YouTube that is not necessarily correct. There's a lot of information out in Google. And in my area, I've told many people, listen, you cannot be a Google doctor. If you have a symptom, if you have a problem, don't diagnose yourself. That's not a smart thing. Go to the emergency room. Let them tell you that it's nothing. That is maybe it's a muscle cramp or something else. But don't play a Google doctor. That's dangerous. And I've seen it many times. Anyway, with that being said, so I feel that we have a responsibility as YouTube to communicate information. I'm in YouTube because my wife kind of forced me into it, meaning that she said, you've been a fish keeper all your life. Why don't you share some of your knowledge? And this is what I like doing. This is why I'm not interested in sponsorship necessarily, because to me, this is a fun part of the hobby. One of the interesting things that Corey also said, that he seemed that this dirty aquarium thing and no water change, nothing, is it's a reason for people to sell product to a bunch of lazy people. Of course, this has gotten reaction from a lot of the people who are on the far end, and the people at the far end, I tend to be in the middle. Whatever you do works for you. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm not trying to change anybody's mind in the dirted tank community. That's not what the idea for this thing was. Now, Patty listened to Corey's comment and he says, you may be right. And we can have civil conversation. I can tell you that in medicine, there's a lot of disagreement. You can sit in the middle of a meeting or on rounds between a group of doctors and different specialties, and you can see that there's not always an agreement. And it's okay to agree to disagree, right? That's fine. We can do that. We can have adult conversations. But this thing did took a very angry turn for a while. We kind of talked post live and not made up necessarily, but everybody has their delivery methods, their tempers. And again, like I said, it was interesting. If you have a chance to go back, it happened on January 3rd, 6 p.m. on Saturday, January the 3rd, Mexicali. I did my job to promote it because I was hoping to draw a lot of people, different opinion, including Dr. Fish stepped in and made several comments, which was good. And also it was a heated conversation. Now, at some point I just said, okay, I stand back. I let them fight it out, but I was having more fun watching the fight. I suggested boxing gloves. And I was really having fun in the chat. I really had nothing else to do. And at some point I went, George, mute them again so I can get something in. I was able to get a few words in, but it was not my plan, as I said. So going back to this thing now, what happened here was not what I had intended to. But anyway, I encourage you to watch it. If anything, it created good YouTube and a lot of drama. But I think some things were said that were important. And I think that was, if anything, that was part of the idea, that it did create a conversation, and many to come, I'm sure. The fish hobby has gone over the years through a lot of different things. Some of us who have been there have tried different filtering method. But again, my thought is that in any extreme, you could not take. You can see my previous comments on Patty's Aquatic Live, that you cannot take anything and bring it to an extreme and say somebody And somebody made a comment, now just because Corey said it, it's something very important right now. And I said, well, that's not necessarily true, because it's somebody could be alive, 100 years. Now, just because you don't understand the method, that you say, going across the street can potentially be dangerous. You go, well, I've been crossing it all my life. Nothing has ever happened, until one day a car runs you over, It doesn't mean that you don't understand that there is a potential danger to something else. You could still do it and you've gotten away all your life. How many people do I know that smoked for 100 years? Maybe 80, maybe 50. They've never had lung cancer. Now, you have somebody who never smoked. My sister-in-law, she passed at 46, never a smoker, right? Suddenly, lung cancer, she didn't last 6 months after diagnosis. So you can do something for a long time and get away with it, right? Now, you do what works for you. Every case is different. As human beings, we are all individual, and no two people are alike. No two fishes are alike. No two fish tanks are alike. This is a unique environment, unique ecosystem in each tank. My tank is different, but I do change water once a week because that works for me. If you can get away with every 6 months, that's fine. My filters, I filter the large tank with an FX6. I get away with doing it every 8 months. I use a pre-sponge, which helps a lot with a lot of the heavy debris. And I have one that I'm going to push it to a year, because when I opened at 8 months, it looked pretty damn good, in my opinion. I said, this was not that dirty. I could have let it go on longer, but that was fine. I cleaned it, did the servicing on it, lubricated what I needed to lubricate, and it was fine. And they're doing fine. And again, my opinion, gray filters, I'm not sponsored by Fluval either, but you know what I'm talking about. So now, one of the things that he said about the lazy people. I'm not calling you anybody lazy. We all have jobs, we all have lives, and I understand that. But my opinion on this thing is, we get into fish keeping because we want to take care of fish. I enjoy the plants as much as I enjoy the fish. If you get into the hobby, I'm assuming that is because you like fish and you want to take care of fish. Now, if you say that it is too much work and you're trying to create the least amount of work, I keep 11 tanks right now, and I can manage them. Today was my water change day. I did all the water change. It probably need a little bit over an hour, more or less, all of them, 80%. On some of them, I clean the glass when it's needed. I grab a bag maybe once a month, every few weeks. That's needed, again, to my, whatever I think is needed means, right? Or whatever I see that there's accumulation of dirt down here on the bottom. Some detritus, okay, I think I should vacuum today, right? But overall, I keep stable tanks. Do fish die? Absolutely. Sometimes they die without a reason. You'd never know, right? But going back to the lazy things, if you keep 40 tanks, a lot of you do, and that's fine. Listen, I wish I could keep, another 10 tanks maybe, because there's some fish that I don't have that I like to have. But in my current setting, 11 tank is almost a little bit excessive, but it's basically out of the way of my living room, and it's in dead spaces where you normally wouldn't. It would just be an empty space. So it fits well where it is and the way it is. And I keep my tank pretty pristine. It has to be. Otherwise, my wife will park me out on the street with all the tanks. They're clean. I like to keep clean tanks, and that's what I prefer to look at. Sean went as far as calling them swamp tanks, and Dr. Fish commented that the swamps really have the most pristine waters. They do, and this is a very dynamic ecosystem. Swamp doesn't mean that the water is dirty, right? There's a lot of fish there, a lot of sensitive fish that live in the area. But again, the whole thing about a swamp and bodies of water that apparently don't move, there is water movement. There's rain runoff, stuff evaporates, rain comes in. But what I have things about it, against the dirty tank idea, is that you're just gonna keep tapping the water when it evaporates. You think that whatever is in the water right there is gonna stay there. Water evaporates into a gas form, and then you're gonna add food, you're gonna add other things are gonna decompose in there. All that stuff stays there, and your TDS, which I've never measured except a few days before this live, I just wanted to see what my water was, and the TDS in my area was 55 for New York City water. The highest one was one of the tanks behind me on this side, which was 135, because I'm currently medicating. So there's stuff dissolving there. And again, that was before a water change. So stuff builds up. What's in your total dissolved solid? Who the heck knows? Nobody knows. We don't measure for those things. Now, can some of those things potentially diffuse into fish, or stuff through osmosis come out of the fish into these dissolved things, because they're physics law, they're science laws that affect it, right? So we don't know how it's going to affect it. So then you're one day you say, well, why did my fish die in my dirted tank? Again, I'm not saying that it's wrong. I don't hate you for it, as I said previously. But my thing is, they are extreme, and it was stuff that I needed, some basic science things that I thought we could discuss. Again, if you're listening to me for the first time, I am a nurse for 41 years. And after nursing, I did a biochem major. So there's a lot of bit of science behind me. And let me digress for a minute. We're talking about lazy people. Why am I nursing? My idea after I did a biochem major with the thought of going medical school, but for financial reason, it was not a thing that it was feasible. I love what I do. There was not one day that I went to my job saying, I hate my job. I don't. I love what I do. I really do. And I went into nursing. There's always a backup plan. Along with nursing, I had a second job. I ran a business for about 15 years, home improvement business, where I did most of the work. I did electrical, plumbing. I did a good portion of landscaping. I had a truck, dump truck. I had everything, right? But it was not profitable. I was doing most of the work. I had a few helpers, but I did all the work, and it was hard work. And one of my friends said, "Listen, you're not really making profits here. Any profits you're giving it to your employees or the people that you're working with. Just take a second job." And I did. I do contract nursing, renewable contracts. If I choose not to work for a few months, I take a rest. I do that. But again, that is not the same physical work that I did when I was on my knees for 12 hours laying tiles, for example. The reason why I'm leading into that part of it is that I'll tell you in a second, as far as the landscaping part of it. I think yesterday I mentioned about the danger of Google, the danger of YouTube, not being a danger, but misinforming people, because some people will latch onto an idea, they take it up as in their own, and they speak like they have great knowledge on this topic. And there was one gentleman, boyfriend of one of my older sisters. I'm 62 again, so my sister is about 70 now. This gentleman, white American, right? He is. My sister asked me about a glucose monitoring device, which I wear one. I'm diabetic since I'm 45, and then I say, "Are you diabetic?" I know some of us are, right? My family. And she says, "No." I said, "Why do you need this thing?" And she said, "Well, I want to see when sugar peaks and whatever." I said, "But why do you need to do that? Because everything you put into your mouth, everything has to be converted to glucose, and you're going to cause a peak regardless of what you eat." So then she puts this gentleman on, and he goes on for a good half an hour, and with his theories, a little bit far out there, I believe, in my opinion and my knowledge and my work conditions, right? And I told him at some point, and I'm texting on the background as he's listening to him, and I told my sister, "Don't listen to this guy. He's a little bit on the deep end of things. He's in the extreme side, which is what I'm talking about." And then at the end, I said, "What kind of work do you do?" Or, "Well, I'm retired now, but what did you do for a living?" He says, "I'm a landscaper." Again, nothing against landscaper. I did it myself, and I will never belittle any trade, any occupation, because we need a little bit of everybody. And some of that I have done. I went through high school. I was an auto mechanic while I went through nursing school. I took nursing. I wanted to do laboratory work, but I said I don't have exposure to people as a lab. But my ultimate goal was to do general surgery. I love surgery. I don't like general medicine, but I love surgery. You have the opportunity to help people, fix them and send them home in a better state. Medicine, generally, you see people decline over a period of time and eventually pass, right? I like the happier part of it, of surgery. Economic, after I finished my biochem major, I started studying for the MCATs and to go entry to medical school. I was about 40 at the time, and then I thought that economically and everything else, I didn't have the financial support and I could not afford it to do it. So I said, I like what I do for now. I'll keep doing what I do for now, and I still enjoy it every day. I'm happy to go to work. I have had the pleasure of taking care of being involved in the care of former U.S. presidents, 3 major religious leaders to the level of the Pope in another religion, highly respected people and well-known people. I have had the pleasure of taking care of celebrities, well-known celebrities. So I've had really a vast exposure, and at some point I did some what we call high-tech nursing, where I visited people with some complex treatments and electronic implants and stuff, and I serviced those people at home for about 6 years. So I went from literally treating kings and queens of countries at home when they visited us here, or to one of the worst slums in the city. And I've dealt with a lot of stuff in my hand and stuff. And as far as the lazy part, there have been a lot of great young nurses that I work with, and in my job, I do a lot of training. There's one particular young nurse who I was assigned to be her preceptor that day. So we got a patient in from a nursing home who wasn't clean, and she said, "Jose, can you help me take care of this person?" One of our assistants came up and tell her, "What's wrong with her? She's just a new nurse and she wants to." I said, "Listen, we should have more nurses like Allie, right? Allie is a great nurse. She's very progressive. She's smart. She listens. And when she was going to do something, she comes and she asks for my approval. And I said, listen, you're comfortable with this. I'm comfortable with you. Go ahead and do what you have to do." So thank you, Allie. You're a great nurse and you're going to be greater. Okay. And she's a relatively new young nurse. And we need people who are open to listen. When we don't listen and our tempers are up here and we're yelling, we don't listen to anybody. So that was the whole idea about this. And I think it may have been Mandy from Zen, I forgot her channel name, or it may have been one of the two ladies with the channel that are usually involved in the chats. I did not mean to. And one of the comments that she made was, a landscaper can teach you a thing or two. And I said I did not mean to be that offensive, but it was just the stuff about the danger of misinformation in YouTube, because this guy listens and has this theory within him, and then he's bad-mouthing the medical people. And I said, listen, you should listen to your doctors, And then I asked my sister, what does his doctor tell him? That I said that he's listening too much to Google and YouTube, which was my point. Well, I think we have a moral responsibility to tell people the wrong thing to do. Most of us say, this is my view, my opinion, and these are all my opinions that I'm saying. And it's important to have some common sense, to come to an agreement. And it was just supposed to be a great civil discussion on different topics, on things that we do. They do it differently, and somebody said, Dr. Fish, actually, he commented, it's all about the plants. And I said, of course it's all about the plants, but water gets saturated to a point that plants are going to take what they need, stuff stays there, and then we add some more. But in bodies of water, even though it's not apparent, you will have water movement, right? He also said in one of his comments, but in the Amazon, during the rainy season, the flood waters, right? Discus, which I keep a bunch of discus will lay eggs on the branches. Again, I said, yes, there we go. We have water movement. We have the flood waters, which encourages the discus to lay eggs, or a lot of the fish. Often, right now, there's another pair there. I have 2 or 3 pairs that at least once or twice a week, they're laying egg continuously. The change of water, the water conditions, there must be something good about it, I'm thinking, right? And sometimes 3 at a time. And this is all about keeping good water conditions, and extremes in anything, whether it's religious belief, Jim Jones forcing a belief into a bunch of people and forcing them to drink a poisonous substance, and they're all gone, right? That's the reference for the younger ones who may not have been around or too young to remember that incident. But anyway, that was supposed to be the idea during Mexicali's life. Which turned out to be something different. So thank you again for listening to me babble. This was not intended to change anybody's mind, because you won't. If you are of a political side, no matter what I said, it's not going to change your mind. You still have your beliefs, and you're still going to do what you do, right? If you're a fish keeper and you believe that the dirty tank is the only way to go, with no filtration, no aeration, no water movement, no water changes, just top off. Topping off, in my opinion, topping off is not a water change. You're just adding water that you evaporate out. Pure water evaporates out into its gas form. and then you add more water to refill it again. But the concentrations, any solutes you have in there, that does not change. TDS, right? Uh, Scotty from Racing Fishes did it happen to do after that last video, last live with Corey. He happened, or before that actually, he checked his TDS on his tank and they were over 600. If the EPA says that over 300 is not good for human consumption, why could it be good for fish? And I was trying to get that point across. I was trying to, but it didn't go the way I was hoping to. But this can be talked about for a long time. And hopefully we're not going to come to an agreement because everybody has their beliefs and we're not going to change that. But again, just be conscious out there that everything you hear on YouTube from me, from other people, we're not experts. We share our opinion based on our experiences. Some of us have a little bit different background, and I respect everybody's opinion, everybody's background. But if I was offensive to you, whether it was Mandy or Sarah, I can't remember exactly who it was, but most of us watch each other's videos. So again, I apologize. It was not meant to put down anybody of what you do for a living. We all have done something or another at some point in our lives. So anyway, thank you all for listening. I hope this is a wonderful year for you, and thank you so much.